I, 32 am currently sitting in a rental apartment that smells like industrial citrus and bad decisions, staring at a property deed that feels more like a death warrant than a legal document. For 7 years, I was the provider. I worked 60-hour weeks in industrial logistics so my wife, 31F, could find her soul through a series of failed boutique startups and holistic wellness certifications that I funded. I thought I was building a foundation. I was actually just digging my own grave. The collapse didn't happen with a bang. It happened over a cold plate of pasta last Tuesday. My wife looked at me, her eyes devoid of anything resembling the woman I married, and said, "You never fight for me. You're so focused on your spreadsheets and your stability that you've forgotten how to be a husband who cherishes his wife's spirit." I didn't yell. I didn't even drop my fork. I just looked at her and said, "I shouldn't have to fight to be treated right." She scoffed, a sound full of such unearned entitlement it made my skin crawl. "If you can't see what I need, maybe you don't deserve to be the one providing it." That was the talk. It wasn't a heated debate. It was the moment I realized I had been a host for a parasite. But the real funeral started when I found the bank statements she thought she'd hidden in her meditation room. My wife hadn't just been finding herself. She had been finding a way out with my money. I discovered a secondary account where she had been siphoning off nearly 30% of my post-tax income for the last 18 months. The kicker? Consultation fees paid to a high-end divorce attorney 3 months before she even started picking fights with me. She was setting the stage. She wanted to play the neglected, emotionally starved wife to trigger a no-fault divorce, aiming for the maximum alimony and the house I had paid for entirely with an inheritance from my grandfather. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I went to a lawyer who specializes in aggressive asset protection. He told me she was playing a standard game, wanting the house, the car, and a lifestyle subsidy. But she made one massive mistake: hiding assets during the marriage. When I got home, my wife was sitting on the sofa with her mother, 55F. Her mother is the architect of this entitlement, a woman who has divorced 3 men and kept a piece of each like a trophy hunter. Her mother said they needed to talk about the transition and that my wife needed the house because it was her sanctuary. My wife nodded, looking frail and victimized, saying she needed space to heal from my emotional neglect. I told them the house was premarital property funded by a specific inheritance and was shielded. My wife's face shifted. The fragile soul mask slipped. She told me that because we put both names on the refinancing papers last year, the asset was commingled and was now marital property. Her lawyer had already confirmed it. She had baited me into refinancing specifically to trap the house. I went to the basement to check the router logs and the cloud-synced smart home recordings. She forgot that when I set up the house, I installed a high-end security system. I found recordings of them plotting to provoke me into a physical confrontation so they could file for a temporary restraining order, TRO. A TRO would legally boot me from the house immediately, giving her exclusive use, while the divorce wound through the courts. Her mother told her to keep poking me about my father and to call 911 if I even raised my voice. My wife's response was that she hoped I did it soon because she was tired of looking at my face. The funeral for us was over. Now it was time for the autopsy. The next 48 hours were psychological warfare. They tracked my every move, waiting for me to snap. My wife followed me into the kitchen, using that high-pitched, nasal tone she knew I hated, demanding the mahogany dining set. I told her to take it. She was stepping into my personal space, trying to get me to brush past her so she could claim I shoved her. I just stepped backward. I spent the evening digitalizing evidence: the recordings of the false TRO plot, the bank statements of the $84,000 she hid in an LLC, and then I found the nuclear option. Her messages with her wellness coach showed she was sleeping with him and funneling business expenses from our joint account to his non-existent shell company. Wednesday morning, the mask fell off. Her mother stood in the hallway, calling my silence a form of emotional abuse and claiming my wife was shaking and scared. My wife appeared behind her, filming me with her phone, claiming she felt unsafe. Then she dropped the act and demanded I put the savings back into the joint account or she'd call the police and say I was holding her hostage. She actually reached for the phone to dial 911. I told her to go ahead, but to check her email first. I had sent her mother, and her coach's wife a folder titled Discovery. She froze. I told her I had the recordings of them planning the false police report, the LLC fraud, the wire transfers to her boyfriend, and the logs of her bragging about tricking me into refinancing the house. Her mother tried to claim I couldn't record them without consent, but I pointed out they both signed the security system's terms of use 18 months ago. I walked out and met my lawyer to file for a fault-based divorce on the grounds of adultery and dissipation of marital assets. In our state, if a spouse spends marital funds on an affair or hides them, the court can deduct that from their share of the assets. My lawyer called later to say they were panicking and wanted to settle quietly because of the false report recording. I said no settlement yet. I wanted the coach served and the mother out of the house. When I got home, I had a private security detail in the driveway and the locks were being changed. My wife and her mother were on the lawn with suitcases. Her mother screamed about her rights, but I told her she had the right to remain silent. My wife tried to play the confused card, blaming her mother, but I told her I wasn't fighting for her anymore. I was fighting against her. We ended up in a mediation room. Her lawyer looked miserable. They offered to waive alimony and do a 60-40th split. I said zero. I told her she gets zero, returns the $150,000 she siphoned, signs away the house, and signs an NDA, or I hand the files on her identity theft and credit card fraud to the district attorney. She had opened cards in my name to fund her lifestyle. She cried about giving me the best years of her life, but I told her I was just giving her the consequences of her choices. She signed the papers with a trembling hand. I then informed her that all the business equipment for her boutique, the recording gear and meditation pods, belonged to me since they were bought with stolen marital funds. I had already sold them to a liquidator who was picking them up at 4 p.m. She realized her entire brand was gone. I also forwarded the info on the coach's shell company to the IRS. Since he hadn't reported that income and his assets were high enough, he was hit with a massive audit. His wellness center was seized, and his wealthy wife filed for divorce using my evidence. I'm back in my house now. It's quiet. No more fake incense or plotting. I lost a wife, but found my life. I realized that if you're the only one fighting in a relationship, you're not a partner. You're a target. The house is back in my name. The title is Two Of's Clean, and the funeral is finally over. If you enjoyed watching a wellness scammer get served a reality check by a guy with a paper trail, feel free to subscribe. I promise my updates are more grounded than a crystal healing session in the desert.